Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Just waiting on everybody to come in the building. Just waiting on everybody to come inside the building. Check, check, check. As soon as everybody gets in the building, we're going to get started. Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Shabbat shalom to everybody in the building. Shabbat shalom to everybody in the building.
Check, check, check.
Hope everybody can see me. If you guys can see me, just let me know. If my audio is coming through on point, please let me know. We should be starting in a couple minutes. Just waiting on you guys to arrive. As soon as you guys arrive, we're gonna get started. Um, there's an interesting conversation brewing right now that I think is relative in the context of the Torah and the Tanakh. Um, that idea is chattel slavery and the notion of ancient Egyptians practicing chattel slavery. It's been a brewing topic for, I want to say, a couple of years now. No one really jumping out the window. However, about 2 years ago, um, possibly even 3 years ago, when COVID first started, I certainly jumped out the window on the topic and challenged some good people in the community to have a dialogue, if not even a debate, on this very topic because of how pressing and how powerful I thought this topic could be in terms of, bringing the community to a greater state of enlightenment. And so, in engaging the community, let me share. Let me take the share button for a second, y'all. In the meantime, just thumb up the video and share the live. I'm gonna take the share button and make sure everybody can see that we're live. All right, so again, yes, share the video, thumb up the video and share the live, and we are certainly gonna proceed. There's a lot that I said I wanted to share with you guys this evening. There's a lot that I've been watching, a lot that I've been seeing. Some conversations I choose not to waste time. For the most part, that's most of the conversations happening that I see in and out the community. For me, it's literally a waste of time to have discussions about most of these topics. So I try to stay as far possible away as I can. But at times, a topic such as this topic might appear that jogs my interest and gets me riled up and wanting to engage. And so I played a video about an hour ago from a PhD candidate speaking from the Journal of Egyptian Archaeology. Um, and one of the things that she made mention of is the branding of slaves in ancient Egypt and the treating of various slave populations at a particular period in Egypt as chattel slaves. And I think that was a very interesting point to make from academia because it's been a brewing conversation in our community. And so, for that reason, I thought it was an interesting point. Um, I played the video on my YouTube channel, on this channel, like I said, just about an hour ago. So I don't think I'm going to be playing it right now, except maybe to comment on a couple of things. But what I will do right now is play this video because this video on the screen, I think you guys really should check out. So here we go. We are absolutely going to play this video. Throw up the live, family. Take the video link, post it all over social media so that everybody can see that we're live. With that being said, Shabbat Shalom to everyone, and let's get it.
There you go. You got it.
So I said that I did not want to talk about how, in my mind, how the Africans treated the Nubians, because I didn't want to play into their hand. I was looking for a source that I can use.
All right, so from the outset, there's a problem. From the outset, there's a problem. One thing about scholarship, especially honest scholarship, is when there's something to be said as a matter of truth, then that is what a scholar is tasked to do. You're tasked to speak the truth, right? You're not supposed to hold back information because of how it may depict one or make one look bad and enrich the other. A scholar is tasked to speak the truth, right? Regardless of what direction that truth takes him, a scholar, a genuine scholar, is tasked to speak the truth. And so watch how things get a little interesting, y'all, as I point this out for you right now, because you literally just heard Brother Reggie literally say that he didn't really want to speak about how the Africans treated the Nubians. Even him using the term African is dubious because he's really trying to say the Egyptians, right? But he's being very, very careful, right, not to impeach Kemet, right? Not so much because he's a practitioner in any Kemetic spirituality, but he has friendships, he has relationships, and he has a lot of ties. And so I understand his diplomacy. However, as a scholar, you're not supposed to do that. So I'm going to play the video. I'm going to comment when needed. And I want you guys to pay very, very close attention.
There you go. You got it.
So I said that I did not want to talk about how, in my mind, how the Africans treated the Nubians, because I didn't want to play into their hand. I was looking for a source that I can use where the Africans dealt with the sea people. And so I thought we went over this, and I thought I sent it to you, but we're just gonna do it again.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is what my show. I was gonna wind up at this. But let's go. You got the floor still.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. So this Papyrus Harris translation, I'm not really comfortable with because I was trying to read it from word to word, and I think that they paraphrased this particular source. But in reading this, right, we have this problematic text right here. This text right here is kind of problematic. So again, I went to the TLA, and then when I was looking at the TLA, I saw things that I did not want to talk about with the Hebrews and stuff like that. So I kind of like hid my hand. I'm not the Hebrews, sorry. I saw sources where they was dealing harshly with the Nubians and the Tamhu. And
we can look at all of those, but
all right, I'm going to back that up a little bit just for clarity. So Brother Reggie said when he looked through various sources, he saw how the Nubians were treated very harshly and the Tamhu were treated very harshly. What he's very careful not to tell you is the people's names that treated them harshly, which are the people of ancient Kemet. Because again, he's withholding this information because, he has relationships. He has ties. So as a matter of diplomacy, as a matter of friendship and relationships, I guess you can say you can somewhat understand, right, to be a human. But again, a scholar, an honest scholar, is tasked to speak the truth. And so when you have a person do this, your credibility is going to be put on a measuring stick from this point onwards. People are going to begin to say, well, what can we trust you revealing to us versus what can we co-sign you not revealing to us? All right. So that's a very, very important point that he's making it very, very clear from the outset that he is not showing his full hand so as to save face and shame to many Kemetic practitioners who don't want the greater community to know how cruel the people of ancient Kemet have been throughout history and how at times they did not practice the very things that they upheld, such as Ma'at, which many Kemetic practitioners and teachers try their very best to cover and to hide. right? I said many, not all, but many, right? So Reggie is trying to save face. Here we go.
Looking for a source that I can use where the Africans dealt with the sea people. And so I thought we went over this and I thought I sent it to you, but we're just gonna do it again.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is what my show. I was gonna wind up at this. You know, but let's go. You got the floor still.
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen. So this Papyrus Harris translation, I'm not really comfortable with because I was trying to read it from word to word, and I think that they paraphrased this particular source. But in reading this, right, we have this problematic text right here. This text right here is kind of problematic. So again, I went to the TLA, and then when I was looking at the TLA, I saw things that I did not want to talk about with the Hebrews and stuff like that. So I kind of like hid my hand. Not the Hebrews, sorry. I saw sources where they was dealing harshly with the Nubians and the Tamil. And
we can look at all of those, but right now they're talking about invaders, correct? So that people are clear on this text. They're talking about the sea people invaders.
No, they talk about, yes, the Tamil, the Titino, and the sea people, all in different, because they was Ramesses III was fighting everybody. He was busting everybody's ass. So we come to this part right here. This part right here. And this says that he says, I've imprisoned their leaders in fortresses bearing my name. I've added to them the chief archers and tribal chiefs, branded and enslaved, tattooed with my name, and their wives and children treated the same. So then we go over here and then we test this, right? So this word abu is to brand, right? And this over here, this word over here has the him symbol, right? And this is where they get slave, right? From it. So this version of him, they're actually using it as slave.
But that's used as a determinative right there. What's the word?
Right. So this word right here, how can I say? Here's the thing. This determinative is him, right? So we see the M. So we would say right? To make, right? And then
to make a servant.
To make us, but they're not just.
But the word got a ooh. I see iri ooh m him. So to making them servants.
Yeah, but the problem is what type of servants are they making them? They're branding them. So they're branding their servants.
So so that's where we have to talk about who these people are.
Yeah, that's what. So it's in context. So all of it is in context because, yes, I'm listening.
So say these people broke into the Egyptian house, so to speak. The sea people, then they brought down what we known as the Bronze period. That means they collapsed every other civilization that they ran up on. So saying that Egypt has slaves, this is not a good attestation because these are some people who again committed an egregious crime against the state of Egypt, and then they got punished. They got punished with, but then here go furthermore is what we need to know, and it says further in the middle of the text, in the rest of the text, they were not allowed to live in Egypt. So they couldn't be slaves. These people got sent to what they became known as the Phoenicians. They got branded and they got sent into an area of the Levant.
Okay, I just want to play that part again, just to be clear that he does acknowledge that the Egyptians practice branding, because right now the good brother Smash Rockwell, shout out to Jonathan Owens of the Magi Archers, he's live right now on his channel, and he's explaining that what is regarded as branding is not really branding, it's really tattooing and painting. But that seems to disagree with something that he's actually admitting right now. He's actually admitting right now the Egyptians certainly practice branding, right? I want that stated for the record. So we're going to play that back right now. And I just think it's interesting that he's on his channel live now, suggesting that there was no branding and trying to prove the case for tattooing of some sort, when in this video he acknowledges that they're branding. So I just think that that's interesting. But let's play that just for clarity.
Egypt, and then they got punished. They got punished with, but then here go further the more is what we need to know. And it says further in the middle of the text, in the rest of the text, they were not allowed to live in Egypt. So they couldn't be slaves. These people got sent to what they became known as the Phoenicians. They got branded and they got sent into an area of the Levant.
It says fortresses.
But we could go through more of the text and start identifying where they start showing that they send them out of Kemet. And so attestation to show, I mean, again, the branding is there, but that's like a motherfucker breaking my house. I might do some egregious stuff that I wouldn't do to a normal person.
So again, I mean, for clarity and just to be honest, right? Because I mean, at the least bit, that's what scholars are supposed to be, honest, right? So for clarity, Jonathan says several times here that the Egyptians did in fact brand these people. So why is he on his channel now saying, wait, no, they were actually tattooing them? And this is the part of the conscious community that for me, I don't really want a part of, right? When I first got into the community, I thought it was really about information until I literally saw some of your famous scholars lying to save face. That's when I was like, wait, so this is not really about the pursuit of truth. This is about agendas. This is about friendships. This is about relationships. This is not really about the pursuit of truth, right? So, you know, it's at that point that for me, I no longer have any real genuine interest, right? As a person who loves the sport and the art of debating, I'll always love that. But I just can't be invested, right, heart, mind, body, and soul into going on these platforms knowing that some of these people will lie, right, bold-faced lie. And again, for clarity, Jonathan made mention several times in this video so far, and you're going to hear him say it again, that the Egyptians did in fact practice branding on slaves. But he's actually live on his channel right now saying, wait, no, I think they were actually tattooing them. So that's why don't ask me to turn on YouTube and enter this arena. I get people all the time that say, Zion, we need you back. We need you back. For what? I laid a lot of work already. I've done a lot, right? I'm very, very comfortable behind the scenes with the classes that I do. We are extremely successful with that. I really don't have any interest to jump into the so-called conscious community like that, because I see that a lot of people have a vested interest in protecting friendships, relationships, and harboring agendas. And because of that, I don't really have a desire to jump into those arenas. I have respect for some of those people, one of them even being Jonathan. I just think that right now, some of what he's saying is a little disingenuous in light of him, at least in this video. And mind you guys, I'm not playing a video from 3-4 years ago. I'm playing a video that he was on a live stream 2 days ago. I got y'all attention, right? A person is always allowed evolution and growth, right? So, you know, if he changes his mind, he changes his mind. If he thought at the time that he said in the video that it was branding, but now he believes it's tattooing, evolution, right? People grow. But I'm not quoting from a video from 3 and 4 years ago. This is from a live stream that was 2 days ago. And Jonathan Owen speaks to Meta Nature, teaches the history and the culture. So how is it that within a span of 2 days, he went from saying they were in fact practicing branding on slaves to now all of a sudden I entered the conversation today. I didn't even speak. I just shared a video and he immediately went live. This is the same community that says I don't have relevance. I just uploaded a video earlier. I didn't even go live. And he immediately felt compelled to go live. I think that speaks volumes to my contribution. But here we go.
down what we known as the Bronze Period, that mean they collapsed every other civilization that they ran up on. So saying that Egypt had slaves, this is not a good attestation, because these are some people who had been, again, committed an egregious crime against the state of Egypt, and then they got punished. They got punished with, but then here go furthermore is what we need to know, and it says further in the middle of the text, in the rest of the text, they were not allowed to live in Egypt. So they couldn't be slaves. These people got sent to what they became known as the Phoenicians. They got branded and they got sent into an area of the Levant.
It says fortresses.
But then we could go through more of the text and start identifying where they start showing that they send them out of Kemet. And so then using that attestation to show, again, the branding is there, but that's like a motherfucker breaking my house. I might do some egregious stuff that I wouldn't do to a normal person.
Agree.
You
but
feel
we're
me?
only feeling, no, but I agree. Smash. I agree. I have another text. Which I did not want to show, but
it's
you know
all
when
good, but unless you don't use it for the debate.
Smash, are you? Okay, go ahead. Are you saying there's no slavery in Kemet? Is that what we're saying?
Nah, my argument is that it existed on the outskirts of. It was not.
So that's a good question by Brother Jeremiah Judah. He asked because he was on the panel, and I believe he's even on the live stream now, so he can attest to what I'm saying, much of what I'm saying. That the live stream was literally from 2 days ago. He asked Jonathan at this point, so are you saying there was no chattel slavery in Egypt? And Jonathan said, yes, it existed, but it existed on the outskirts. Again, right? This practice of trying to rationalize or marginalize things that are being done in Egypt that are shameful to have to admit today. And from the stance of a practitioner, right? Someone who has a particular faith-based investment in something, maybe I can understand why someone would say that. But again, these men are scholars. And the last time I checked, Jonathan Owens doesn't present himself, I could be wrong, but doesn't present himself as a practitioner of Kemetic spirituality. Certainly not in the way as those Kemetic practitioners that we know of today. And so I don't really see the need for him to want to kind of marginalize what happened or try to rationalize what happened or literally try to fantasize away what happened, right? He knows that chattel slavery was practiced. He knows that Egyptians were branding their slaves, but he's trying his best to marginalize it because, again, this particular brother, Jonathan or Smash Rockwell, he represents a fighting force in ancient Kemet known as the Magi. If I could remind, let me speak to y'all real quick. I don't all forget to preach to the choir, but let me talk to y'all real quick. Because I know he's gonna watch the video, so I want to talk to him real quick. The Magi archers joining in and helping Kemet, there was no religious reason for that. These men were mercenaries. You know what influenced them joining Kemet in arms in battle to fight enemies? Money, gold, resources. These men were mercenaries. So I'm saying that to say, Jonathan, you shouldn't even have a race in the horse. The Magi of old were called to defend Kemet as a nation state. They were never called to defend Kemet religiously. So even the context in which your title, and I mean this with respect, right? Because this is a brother that I have respect for. But within the context of which you use your title and your name for your group, the Magi Archers, you guys were never called upon in a religious context. You were called to physically defend the nation state of Kemet. So you probably needed on a real battlefield somewhere to go and take that Kemet from the Arabs that's there. And if I could say this as a matter of respect to a brother that I know that I've met in person, because we've met in person, instead of banging on the internet talking about you the Magi Archers, we want to see you pull up in Kemet right now and get back the land from the Arabs that are there now, because that was the job of the Magi archers. The Magi archers weren't called to read and interpret Kemetic text like what you're doing. You're doing too much. You're doing too much. Respectfully. Let's keep going.
Area sent into an area of the Levant.
It says fortresses.
But then we could go through more of the text and start identifying where they start showing that they send them out of Kemet. And so then using that attestation to show, I mean, again, the branding is there, but that's like a motherfucker breaking my house. I might do some egregious stuff that I wouldn't do to a normal person.
Agree.
You
but
feel
we're
me?
only feeling, no, but I agree. Smash. I agree. I have another text.
By the way, guys, I will be showing a PowerPoint presentation tonight. I'm just playing this video as a, you guys, if you're familiar with my style of teaching, this is just a build-up. I do have a PowerPoint presentation to set a couple of things straight, right? This is just a build-up. I just want what they had to say on the record, so that when I respond, not only will you understand my response, but my response will carry that much more impact. So follow me on this one.
The text, which I did not want to show, but
it's all good, but unless you don't use it for the debate.
Smash, are you already used? Okay, go ahead. Are you saying there's no slavery in Kemet? Is that what you're saying?
Nah, my argument is that it existed on the outskirts of, it was not a central institution to Egypt. It existed on the outskirts of society. We know almost just like homosexuality and everything, it would have had to have existed for them to have a law ma'at to say, don't do that. Right?
Yeah, you're right. Egypt just had it more than everybody.
I think I proved my point, Smash.
Yeah, you made a good point there, but I hope you hear what I said.
With the Hebrews, right? Because see, I have to be very careful of nowadays trying to be neutral and then giving it away to people who use it in a different way. But this text right here would prove my point, because first a prison, right, they call it fortresses. So they put them in fortresses, and it was lots of them. It was this I guess these terms over here, right, where they say hundreds of thousands, right? I guess this is where they try to say hundreds of thousands. I think the person who translated it just basically did a sick.
But you know that why that's not good, because you're talking about slavery.
Right, but when you put people, see, prisoners are slaves.
But feel me, they have prisoners.
Shout out to Brother Reggie, man, because at times Brother Reggie will keep it absolutely real. Brother Reggie is not here to support all the goofiness. Not saying that everything that Madjai is saying is goofy, but Reggie certainly did not come on this day to support the goofiness. Brother Reggie said, listen, you're trying to call them captives, but how are captives treated? As slaves. Brother Reggie even reminds him that even in the United States Constitution, it is built into the Constitution that if someone is brought into prison, that they have no rights and they are regarded as slaves. So when Egypt fought wars and brought back war captives, those war captives were treated as slaves. But watch how things get even more interesting. Because not only did they bring back the war captives, I got to look at y'all as I'm talking, they brought back their women and their children. The women and the children weren't fighting. Why are they prisoners of war? Here's an even greater question. When we talk about ancient Kemet or ancient Egypt, or when the practitioners and teachers in Team Kemet, I put that in air quotes, Team Kemet, when they talk about ancient Egypt, right, they love to say that, yes, ancient Egyptians had captives, but they weren't slaves. There's a difference between saying Egyptians had slavery, a system of slavery. Egyptians had indentured servitude, is what they will tell you, and they did have indentured servitude, by the way. They will say Egyptians were practiced bonded or debt bonding, right? If someone didn't have money, they sold themselves into slavery. That absolutely happened in ancient Egypt. That's a Snapple fact. But then they say, and the only other form remaining are two, being the hem or the bak, right? And I'm going to show you in a couple of slides how the term bak is grossly taken out of context by Kemetic teachers in the conscious community, because they try to act like that just means servant or even serf, and there's no real negative connotation there, like how we would regard slavery today. And I'm gonna literally show y'all something that's going to change the game. Like I said, I've been sitting on information for a while, and I don't always bring everything out because I'm more interested in building up our communities and playing a hand in building up our communities, if I could say it a little bit more accurately, because I'm only one man. And being one man, I'm ready to roll up my sleeves, get my hands dirty, and put my hand in, right? So that the community can be built up. So when I gauge the level of priority for me is about building our communities. So I'm playing my role by offering various services, educational services, albeit to service our community. The debates and stuff are cool, but if that's all we're doing, we're really not doing nothing. But at times like this, you're going to see me jump back in because it's meaningful to mention. It's meaningful for conversation and for growth. And so again, when it comes to war captives, the Kemetic teachers are going to tell you guys that they just had prisoners of war. And the prisoners of war, yeah, they weren't treated the best, but they're war captives. We're not going to treat them the best. They came to Kemet and they did this, they did that. They were trying to beat down the people of Kemet. Here's what they don't tell y'all. They don't tell you that most of the prisoners of war that Egypt had, they got them while fighting abroad. Uh-oh. They don't tell you that most of the prisoners of war that the Egyptians had, they got them because the Egyptians were not fighting in Egypt, they were fighting abroad. So that doesn't mean that you were invaded and you had to protect yourself each and every case. This is why, if you notice, I'm a very observational person. And I like to think that I'm an intelligent Black man. And just on that notion alone, I'm going to say this to you. Questions bring us to a place of discernment, so we should always question everything. The questions that we should ask ourselves is, if Egypt is really innocent and their hands are clean, and, if they did have some form of forced servitude, it was because of prisoners that they captured in war, then you would want to ask yourself, what was the context of those wars? Meaning, what instigated it? Who instigated? Who started it? Because those are the questions that will have you rightly gauge what's really going on here. You should also be asking yourself, where were the wars fought? In the case of the Sea Peoples, so to speak, they brought the war to Egypt. So you could understand that. Unless you get deeper into that story, because it does get deeper, and you realize that before the Sea Peoples invaded ancient Kemet tried to make vassal states out of them. So their invasion wasn't about just trying to come to Kemet and steal resources. Their invasion was them saying, no more. It was an actual act of rebellion. Rebellion from what? At this point in history, Kemet is starting to spread her wings. When do the Sea Peoples invade Kemet? During the New Kingdom period. You see, I'm a dangerous person. Why am I dangerous? Because I'm not going to enter the conversation and just talk about pictures and images alone. I'm familiar with the history of the region. So we're going to have a very developed conversation when I enter the conversation. The Battle of the Sea Peoples that takes place, that's brought to ancient Egypt, that brought in Egypt, that the Sea Peoples actually take to Egypt. that wasn't brought there for no reason. The sea peoples weren't just jumping out the window looking for resources, looking to rape, rob, pillage, and steal. It was an act of rebellion because it's during the New Kingdom period that now Kemet wants to finally be an empire. Before that time, Kemet maintained what's called a state of isolation. She remained virtually isolate. She didn't really set her eyes on conquering other nation states. She always had Canaan, the Canaanites, kind of in a chokehold. But other than that, she didn't really have a vested interest. She had the Nubians, the same Nubians that they say is the mother of Egypt. She also had them in a chokehold, taking their resources. But apart from the Nubians and apart from the Canaanites, Egyptians never really had an empire state of mind, pun intended. But it's during the New Kingdom period, which some people will refer to as the Ramesseid Empire, that now Kemet wants to be an empire. And as such, she's now literally spreading her wings. And what she's beginning to do now, she's sending out emissaries to the Aegean, right? The Isles of the Sea, the sea peoples. You know how long Kemet was collecting money from them? You know how long Kemet had them paying? When the sea peoples bring the war to Kemet, it's an act of rebellion. It was not out of nowhere. But that's the part of the story that Jonathan, Reggie, and every other Kemetic practitioner is not going to tell you. They're not going to tell you how the ancient Egyptians actually provoked that invasion. Come on, be smart. Let's keep going.
In order to become a slave, have to commit an egregious action.
I agree. So we're not smash, work with your brother, Reggie. Brother, I know this.
Don't cry now, Reggie.
Hey, let me in due diligence. I mean, yeah, let me. He's letting me into the stream. I'm about to be smashed on my phone. All right, thank you.
Listen, I proved my point.
It's okay to cry. Don't let it out, Reggie.
I proved my point. Hey, can you get this bum off? He's not gonna get me.
Nah, bro. Everywhere you go, you want me kicked out, man. I ain't saying nothing.
Okay, while they're in the midst of arguing, I'm going to also lay out some history for you. So, beginning with Jehutimas III, who was also known as Tutmosis III, beginning with him, and arguably even before him, but historically, beginning with him is where you really begin to see Kemet go out as this empire builder nation state. And what he does, Tutmos III, is he starts to have a series of campaigns in the Levant, military campaigns, where he's going into the Levant, the land of Canaan. He's fighting them for no reason except expansion of this new empire, Kemet, and is bringing back not just men as captives, but he's bringing back women and children, and he's bringing them back in the hundreds of thousands. And mind you, we have the records. It's in my PowerPoint. Did y'all forget I brought some of this out just 2 years ago? So it's known that ancient Egyptians, to answer one of the comments in the comment section, did in fact go out of their way to kidnap and enslave people. That's why you should always ask yourself a question, even now, when you look at the modern warfare that happens in the world. Always ask yourself this question when you hear about war in the world. Upon what base is this war constituted? Who provoked or started the war? And whose version of how the war started really has merit or validity? Who really can be trusted? Got to ask all those questions. And so when I hear the Kemetic teachers saying things like, oh, the sea peoples invaded, and yeah, of course we're going to enslave them and brand them, that they deserved it, right? Wrong, because we got to get deeper into history. Why don't you tell the part that y'all was putting unfair taxes on them, which really was you was trying to be the big homie, right? Muscling them down for money, because Kemet at that time was becoming very great, very powerful due to Tutmos III. And so they decide that they're now going to stretch their wings and begin to dominate all surrounding peoples. One of the peoples being the sea peoples. The sea peoples all banded together and said, not today, homeboy. Today we bring the fight to you. So why not tell the whole story? Why try to make it one-sided and act as if the sea people were unprovoked? Of course they were provoked. And mind you, the sea peoples weren't morally perfect themselves. We're talking about human beings, but at least we're being honest here. That might be the difference between my version of what's happening versus what you hear in these YouTube streets. I'm at least going to tell you guys an honest view of what's happening. I'm not going to paint either side to be morally perfect unless they were. I'm going to call a spade because that's what a scholar and that's what historians do. You're tasked to tell the truth. And you're not supposed to have a horse in the race. Let's keep going.
Wrong, man.
Get the bum out.
Just keep going, Reggie. Just keep going, Reggie.
Right, man.
So I proved my point where now watch this. The people that they took, right? The people that they took were not just the fighters. They took their women and their children, right? And they put them in fortresses. And then they said they branded.
So you're gonna hear Jonathan say no, they didn't. Why does Jonathan say no, they didn't? Not because it didn't happen, but because Jonathan doesn't want that part of the story to come out. But remember, Reggie been doing this much longer than Jonathan Owens. They're gonna say that's appealing to authority. Reggie learned from all of their head honchos. Reggie comes with well-sourced information when it comes to Kemet. And he's actually providing sources. And even though he's providing sources, the only thing that Jonathan offers as a rebuttal is to say, no, they didn't, without providing a source to counter-rebuttal the claim. You see, Reggie's providing sources to establish his claim. And you're going to hear Reggie say several times, I got the Medu Neter, the source here. What are you saying no for? And you don't hear Jonathan once say, well, read it together and let's see what it's talking about. Because they have a vested interest in suppressing truth to uphold various narratives and even relationships that they have. It's just a fact. Reggie was trying to keep it real. Why? Because he's helping Garfield to debate against Brother Jabari. And while we on that topic, should I say this? I hope everybody's paying attention. Because every time Brother Garfield has a serious debate, he debates people every day, people who shouldn't even get attention. But when he has a serious debate, it's usually against the likes of a person like Jabari. And I want y'all to listen to me carefully. Notice how every time he debates Jabari, he literally goes into one of Zion Lex's playbooks. He literally opens up my playbook. Why? Because when I debate Jabari, you know we're always going to have a conversation about Sumer. I want you guys to go back and look at Garfield's debate with Brother Jabari. And when Jabari was saying that, you know, Kemet did this and Kemet did that, and Brother Garfield said, well, if you want to play that game, I can show attestations that Sumer did all of that before Kemet. Uh-oh. Ain't that the same sugar honey iced tea Zion Lex been saying? And was even crucified by Garfield himself when I said it? But it's okay for him to speak towards the truth I brought up in that debate against Jabari when it's useful for him. But when they're cool, y'all see where this is going? This is why I say I don't really mess with that community in the way in which I once did, because it's just too disingenuous. Currently, they're going to have another debate. Garfield has taken another page out of the Zion Lex playbook, because I am literally the first person in the community to come out and address chattel slavery in ancient Egypt. And now, Brother Reggie is helping Brother Garfield in his debate against Jabari. And look at one of the items that he's helping him with: chattel slavery. the very thing that I brought out. I hope everybody's paying attention. But let's keep going.
They didn't. You made that up. You don't want to know why? The sea people didn't bring women and children to fight. Stop doing this to us.
What does the text say? Wait, hold on. Let's go here. Let's just
let me tell you why. They arrived in Egypt in a sense of war. You saying they brought their children on them boats?
Mash, what does this text say right here?
Show me it so I can apologize.
I'm gonna blow it up. You read it.
I'm driving the translation on my phone. But you can't
he's driving, Reggie. He's driving, Reggie, so you gonna have to read.
Go ahead, Reggie, show me.
Yeah, it says Hemet we sin ket right? And then it's ked s.
What you saying? That correct like children?
Right. Women, him.
Yeah, Jonathan, that's what he's saying. The hell you talk about? What you saying is women and children. Jonathan, you read the meta lecture yourself. You know good and goddamn well what it say. Sometimes you really do gotta laugh. You really do gotta laugh. By Jonathan repeating, so what you saying is women and children, it's not because Jonathan doesn't know that that's what it says. It's because he's actually trying to signal to Reggie, what are you doing? What are you doing, homeboy? Because if the Hebrews get a hold of this information, they're going to bomb you. And you're going to actually hear them say it a couple times that they're equally afraid to bring some of this out because of the way in which they believe the Hebrews will deal with it. Be very careful, everybody, to do what's called paying attention. Because what you find is that a lot of things that we bring out, when I say we, I mean the Israelite community, and I do even emphasize myself specifically, a lot of the things that I'll bring out, they'll all disagree and say it's wrong until they begin to have disagreements among themselves, and you'll notice a common denominator. They both start saying the same exact things that I once said. But at one time, they both went against me to say I was wrong, but when they debate each other, that's when the truth comes out. So I'm that person that I'm always watching. I am unafraid to tell you that the thing that makes me deeply dangerous is that I study everybody. And do you know where that comes from? It comes from a place of humility, knowing that I am not bigger than my brothers. Everybody I've named so far are my brothers. Regardless of our views, we're all brothers. And because I know that fact, I'm willing to listen to you, like genuinely listen to you, because maybe you have something to say or offer that's right. However, oftentimes, I find that you guys trip up. And you do what people from old school and old heads call, you're speaking with a forked tongue. You know what that means? That's like a snake. Because you say one thing out of one mouth one day and say one thing out the other mouth the next day. That's called speaking with a forked tongue, or i.e. snake-like behavior. Because it can't be wrong when I say it. But magically, when y'all debating, you use the very things against each other that I brought out. So at this point, it's clear that what I'm bringing out can't be wrong, not when you use it against each other, when you debate each other. I just thought I'd say that. Let's keep going. Like I said, we're going to really stretch this out a little bit, the video. We only got about 5 more minutes of this video to play. Afterwards, I'm going to begin to present some of my case for chattel slavery and branding in ancient Egypt. Wait on it.
Hemet, the women, the Hemet, their wives, or the women, and cat and cat, and then it's I think it's red do ked. Sin.
Okay, I would like to know. We would have to do the whole text because you have to tell.
Okay, no problem. So that's why. Listen, here it goes. You are driving. You can review the text on you can review the text on your side.
You know, we've done this when we thought that it was a bomb against Kemet. And so the question is, how, I'm just asking you, if this is a text about the war,
my cigar. Where's my cigar? I think I'm gonna have to light my cigar.
light it up. That's why I'm trying to go get my cigar. But look, I'm asking you, how if this was a test against women, how did the sea people arrive in war with their women and children?
Watch this. Watch this. I have the text. Read the text. The translation is not good. I'm searching for a better translation.
All right. So again, just to be clear, Reggie has the text on the screen, the source for what he's saying. The source reveals that not only did the Egyptians force the sea peoples into servitude and slavery and captives, but they also took their women and children. Why the women and the children? If this was just about war, why did you go back into the villages and take their women and take their children? So I hope common sense is starting to creep in now, because this was much greater than a war that was fought, where typically when war is fought, people who are left standing, they become captives. And those captives are forced into slavery. That's how the ancient world worked. In many respects, that's how the modern world still works. But people don't go back into villages to take women and children if it's just about war. So the fact that they went back into villages, took women and children, and mind you guys, when you see the numbers, we're not talking about they took 10 women and 20 women and 30 children. They took women and children in the thousands. They took men in the hundreds of thousands, people that had nothing to do with the war. We know the numbers. It's sourced. So why are we playing this game that ancient Egyptians just had captives, war captives? Well, we know for a fact that they exploited slavery to help build up Egypt. No different than America exploited slavery to build up America. And it's in that respect that the Hebrew Israelites say, wait a damn minute, are y'all paying attention? Because the same tactics used by the ancient Egyptians of old to build up Egypt at certain points in their history is the same tactics that America used to build America in our modern history. But people don't pay attention, because even after I say that, somebody's going to go do a lecture. They're going to say, so we needed slave labor to build the pyramids? Come on. That's the old kingdom. We wasn't even dealing with slaves like that. Like, notice I said in certain periods. So what are the main periods? If you want to get detail, I'm a detailed person. What are the main periods where Egypt is going into, particularly the Levant? Because if I was to give you guys a number, a figure, right, accurate, 65 to 75% of slaves brought into Egypt by Egyptians were Asiatic. Fact of history. So watch where things get interesting. So every time you went into the Levant, Asiatic territories to fight, you're coming back with not only captives of war, men, but you're also coming back with women and children. And you're coming back with them in the tens and thousands in regard to the men, the hundreds of thousands. You got to be super stupid to not realize that they're actually provoking war so that they can come in and take these people, bring them back to Egypt. Because what's not being discussed, and that's what I'm going to talk about, is, okay, they say when you want to know where something really originates, they say follow the money trail. So if this is just captives of war, I'm going to ask myself a question. What services are these captives of war employed in? Well, not employed because they're slaves. But what are they being used for by the Egyptians? They're being used in the temple as temple slaves. They're helping to build palaces. They're helping to build monuments. They're helping to build several temples. And they're doing this free of charge because they're not paying these war captives like how they would be paying the bonded or debt slave or servant. like how they would be paying the indentured servant. Those people would be paid, and there are records of various people being paid, but they didn't pay the captives of war. That was free labor. So then, if you have a little bit of intelligence, you begin to understand what was really going on, especially during the New Kingdom period in ancient Egypt. It was an easy cakewalk to provoke a war with Asiatic people, go into that region, take men, women, and children in the hundreds of thousands, bring them back into Egypt, and use their free labor to help build up Egypt. You got to be super stupid to not see the connection in those actions and what America did to our people and are still doing to our people. Zion, I'm with you. America was doing to our people, right? Slavery, but they're not doing it to us now. You ever heard of the prison industrial complex? Have you ever heard of some of the links between the music industry and how many of their executives own private stock in the prison systems so that the music that's inspiring us to kill each other, right, are all owned, the executives, by the same people that have private stock in the largest prisons in this country? You got to be super stupid to not see the connection between all of that. So you understand the prison pipeline. And you understand, even by America's Constitution, when someone goes into prison, they are automatically back in slavery. That's in the Constitution. Where it talks about the amendment of slavery, it literally says, except for one who goes into prison. And who are the people in this country who this country clearly tries to fill their prison system with? That's why I said it's still going on today. Let's keep it going.
Transliterations to test it, right? So we don't have to go back and forth, my good brother. We do not.
People are learning. People are learning, Reggie.
For sure.
Right.
This is not
right, but I don't want everybody. I don't want everybody to learn.
Hey, Smash, I don't call it learning when he just throwing out ad hominems to JJ on here. Just teach, bro.
Okay. He said,
I'm not speaking no more. I'm not doing it no more.
I need you to do it. The thing is, I'm not the moderator right now. James is the moderator. So
James, can you mute him?
I mean,
man, nobody said it. Stop acting like a little bitch, man. Ain't nobody doing shit acting like a little bitch. That's why
you have a question.
JJ, stop, man.
A primary on the screen. I think I could find a better translation. I show right clear in day where they say from this translation, which I do not like, they say that they branded that they branded the men.
Well, okay, let me ask you something, brother Reggie. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like when you bring in when you interject that particular type of what you're calling, I guess, some type of a slave, which you can be indentured servitude.
Oh, I thought I was the only one that heard that. Did y'all just hear that they're trying to suppress the information? And some people are saying, no, bring it out. We need to learn. Brother Reggie says, I don't want everybody to learn. Why does Brother Reggie say he doesn't want everybody to learn? Why does Brother Reggie say he does not want everybody to learn? Because this information could be dangerous in the hand of the Hebrew Israelites, who would easily see the parallels and draw the lines and the conclusion, the final analysis. That's why he doesn't want everybody to learn, because he knows how dangerous this could be for his community. If nothing that's being brought out here can have any meritable use, listen to me carefully, I'm an intelligent black man. If nothing being said here has any meritable use against them, then Brother Reggie would not need to say, I don't want everybody to learn. But because he knows what he's bringing out today has meritable use, which can be used against them meritably, with merit, with weight, with validity, with authenticity, he says, I don't want everybody to learn. And what I say to you guys is, I hope you paying attention. Let's keep going.
Here's the point. The point is, I have a primary on the screen. I think I could find a better translation. I show right clear in day where they say from this translation, which I do not like, they say that they branded they branded the men.
Well, okay, let me ask you something, brother Reggie. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like when you bring in when you interject that particular type of what you're calling, I guess, some type of a slavery, which you could be indentured servitude or whatever.
They branded them, dude.
That's not indentured servitude, but go ahead.
I mean, stop. Why do we have to be so apologetic? They're at war to see people murdered, tens of thousands.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, but I gotta play that part again. Brother Reggie is so frustrated. They keep saying no, they wasn't practicing slavery. They was prisoners of war. Reggie said, yo, they branded them. The branding lasts for life. Homeboy, if you brand me, you have permanently marred my skin with your name, signalizing me being your property. I don't get rid of that. That's for life. The same way that we know that term captive prisoner or prisoners of war, Seker Ankh, I want to debate the Kemetic scholars on that term. I'm going to bring it out in a couple of moments of my PowerPoint, but I want to debate them on that term because they say Seker Ankh means living captive, right? Seker is the word being translated as captive, even though Seker really doesn't mean captive. Seker in the Meta Netra means to strike down, but don't worry. I'm going all into that tonight. Today, I got time, right? I typically would never engage debate style topics on the Shabbat because much of them don't have anything to do with the Bible. But this one is so biblically centered that it made perfect sense to discuss it this evening. So I have a serious PowerPoint lecture to present for you guys tonight as we get through the final moments of this video. Thumb up the video, guys, share it live, and please make sure you continue to support the platform because as I prove every time we open up, it's information that's empowering and inspiring, not just for us, but for all who want to learn. Let's keep going.
Well, okay, let me ask you something, brother Reggie. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Like when you bring in when you interject that particular type of what you're calling, I guess, some type of a slavery, which you can be indentured servitude or whatever.
They branded them, dude.
That's not indentured servitude, but go ahead.
I mean, stop. Why do we have to be so apologetic? They're at war to see people murdered, tens of thousands of Africans. They're mad. And what is the problem with saying that this particular Pharaoh said, you know what? If I'm going to the if I'm not going to make the afterlife, so be it. They've killed my people. And you know what? I am going to separate their asses. I'm going to put them in certain fortresses. I'm going to brand them by their goddamn clans, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm going to kill them because it says I have brought back great numbers. I have brought back great numbers that my sword has spared, meaning people gave up with their hands tied behind their back.
He's reading, guys, but I just want to make it clear. If you look at the screen, it literally says their wives, their children in the tens of thousands. In the tens of thousands, their wives and children. If this is just about war captives, why are they bringing back the wives and children in the tens of thousands? I got one even better for you because I want you to make it make sense. Hold on, I gotta talk to y'all for a minute. You're talking to an intelligent black man here. In that source that Reggie's showing, which I'm going to make sure you see on the screen, it says that they brought back their women and children, their wives and children in the tens of thousands. If this is just about a war that was fought between men, why are they going back into the villages and taking their wives and children in the tens of thousands? Another question. This should even be more obvious. How in the hell do they know whose wife is so-and-so? Uh-oh! So that means when they returned to the village, they was just taking women and children without regard for who's this one's wife. I hope y'all are paying attention. How in the hell would they know, guys? This is not the modern world where somebody could pull out an ID card, and say, the man that you captured, this is his name, William Smith, and I am Shara Smith. No, they would have had no way to know that. So the fact that they went back into the villages, knowing that they wouldn't know whose wife and whose children belonged to who, you should know this was deeper than captives of war. This was about building up the new empire of Kemet in the new kingdom period. I'm going to tell the truth, and I'm going to do it in a way that's compelling, that's going to force you to use your common sense and your intelligence. Let's keep going.
Before my horses, and their wives and children and tens of thousands, and their livestock and hundreds of thousands. I have imprisoned their leaders in fortresses, bearing my name. I have added to them chief archers and tribal chiefs, branded and enslaved, tattooed with my name, and their wives and children have been treated the same. This Norsut Bidi is mad.
No, you messed that up. And if somebody wants, like, that's why certain cats be saying what they be saying. Because the argument you forming around this is easily defeatable.
I'm going to say this from a spirit of debating. I'm going to say this from the spirit of debating. The Magi archers shouldn't be called Magi archers anymore. I'm going to need the Israelite community to take that title away from Jonathan Owens, a.k.a. Smash Rockwell. And I say this respectfully. That's my brother. We could jest like that because it's nothing personal. It's just information. But on the information, I could say he doesn't deserve that title. Because the one thing I know historically about the Magi archers, this was an elite mercenary fighting force employed by the people of Kemet to fight inland as well as outskirt. The Magi were not apologists. All we know from Jonathan Owens, all we've ever seen him do is offer apologies on behalf of Kemet. Since when in Egypt history, Jonathan Owens loves to say source up. Jonathan, I have a request. Can you show me some sources where the Magi archers are being used by the people of Kemet as apologists? So why the hell are you being called a Magi archer? That's a serious title held by a serious group of elite fighting men. And they would have frowned at the idea that we just some scholars. We some apologists. These men were mercenaries employed to divorce people and ban people from breathing air. That's a serious thing, homeboy. You a whole apologist. You're not a Magi. You're not an archer. You're not even a warrior. You're an apologist. Sometimes you got to talk to him.
I already gave you a heads up that that's after a war. You can't use nothing happening after a war and one people win and then say these people were enslavers. That's gonna make
I didn't say that they were enslavers, right? I didn't say.
That's what we talking about, slavery, right?
So they're servants, Smash?
Let me
No,
wait. They were servants?
Look at what happened. Let's look at this. Look at what happened. The fortresses that he put them in, if you will read the whole text, we'll find out they are not in Egypt.
So I don't know Jonathan to be a liar. And as one black man to another, calling somebody a liar is a serious thing. So I'm gonna give him some respect. And I'm not gonna say he's a liar. But I'm gonna say that he should know better. Why is he trying to emphasize that the captives of war, they were brought to fortresses? Bruh, they were brought to prison camps. Say it the right way. The Meta Nature term that's used can denote both a fortress as well as a prison. Why don't you give people the full nuanced context of the word? In fact, do I got to pull out the Meta Nature dictionaries? and start showing the words? Do I got to pull out the Meta Nature dictionaries and start showing the words? Because we got the words for fortresses, we got the words for prison, and we know that they're using the word for prison camps. That's why Reggie is so frustrated, because he knows what's happening right now is very disingenuous, unfortunately, on the part of Brother Smash Rockwell. It's deeply disingenuous. They were prison camps, man. Just admit it. How are you going to be a major nation and don't have a prison? You're going to have to deal with people sometimes who break the law. Why are we playing, man? Just speak the truth. You say you're a Magi archer, but you're just an apologist. But if you want to be a warrior, I'll give you an opportunity. Just be a warrior for the truth.
They are in the Levant. And like I tried to say before, these people got to do what they want because they became known as the Phoenicians. And so
no, I got that. But it doesn't matter.
So where does slavery come in? Show me this then.
Okay. When you put a person in prison, in any vernacular, right? Any vernacular, they are a slave. Now, they in any vernacular, they are a slave. They are involuntarily held as a prisoner, and even in America's Constitution, anybody imprisoned, you can tell them what to do.
Well, let me ask you, Brother Reggie. I was trying to ask you earlier. So if somebody came over to your house and slapped the shit out of you, you ain't gonna do nothing to him?
That's not. You didn't hear the first part.
Yes, Reggie. I will enslave their ass.
You didn't hear the first part.
Come over to my house. Enslave their ass.
You act like it's the same cut. Okay, what do we do to get enslaved?
I will enslave their ass.
What do we do?
Stop. Just a second. I'm gonna be real quick. We have to take chattel slavery out of the mind we are having here. Slavery have different forms. This is slavery post-warfare. But the fact of the matter is, yes, these people were enslaved. We put them in concentration camps in the Levant. Doesn't mean that Egyptians engage in.
All right, so I'm glad somebody is stepping up to speak a little bit more of the truth. All right, I like the term concentration camp and prison camp more than fortress. Jonathan Owens, you're way off by trying to say fortress, and I get it. You're an apologist. I don't know if I can call you a Magi after today. Right? I can't. I can't. And these are respectful jests. People in the conscious community, they get deeply disrespectful, right? They curse, they call you names. I'm not doing none of that. I'm just saying the title that you use, it don't really fit the role that you're playing, because you haven't been a warrior. We haven't seen that. We haven't seen the mercenary set of the Magi. You're not that, right? You're a rapper. You're from a group called the Hieroglyphics, right? You spit hot fire in the booth. You are not a Magi archer. And at the least bit, if you want to be a warrior, we're asking you at least be a warrior for the truth. Because maybe you could salvage some of the term Magi if you at least attempt to be a warrior for the truth. Stop being disingenuous, man. This is the part of the community that I don't want to say frustrates me, because that would mean that I respect some of you to the point where this is a letdown. I'm not let down, nor am I frustrated. I'm a little annoyed. That's the word. I'm a little annoyed. No, but frustration is not a good word. That would mean that I had a expectancy for a lot of these guys. I don't. I don't. But let's play fair. Let's play nice. And now I'm going to take you guys to where some of the more serious scholarship begins. There was another video that I shared on my channel today. I'm going to play that video for you guys right now. That's the video that Smash Rockwell, Jonathan Owens, went live on his YouTube channel about an hour ago because I put up this video. He even commented on the video. And me and Jonathan, we don't have nothing personal. We've always had the ability to argue things out as brothers. And at times, the style of debating, we might throw some intellectual jabs, but nothing deeply personal. And for that, I've always respected him. And even today, I'm not getting deeply personal with the brother. These are all intellectual jabs. It's all fair in love and war debating, right? It's all fair, as we would say. So I'm going to take you guys to where the scholarship on this topic unfortunately begins. I say unfortunately because our people don't start to really accept truth until it comes from the European. So that's why I say unfortunately, where I'm going to take you now is where the scholarship begins. Why is it unfortunate? Because I can come up and say and present exactly what this young lady is about to present. By the way, she is a PhD candidate. She also works with the Chicago Oriental Institute, which is world renowned for archaeology, right? Historical archaeology, especially as it pertains to Egyptology and the study of ancient Egypt. And her dissertation is on this very topic. So that's even more interesting, right? She's going to be talking about branding in ancient Egypt, right? And I want us to take a listen to it. And after we fully hear her out, then I'm going to begin my PowerPoint. All right? But let's have some fun.
Others suggested branding, and yet others left the matter equivocal. Arguing against branding, authors have stated that the tools do not resemble artistic depictions of branding irons, that the tools themselves would have been too heavy to be held the way that they are. And
all right, so let me point out some things that she's saying and offer some explanation from the outset. There are a number of things that are circled on the screen in red. Let me make sure everybody could see it. All right, I'm looking at the YouTube. I can see what you guys are seeing, so I could work. All right, there are about 4 men to the left, right, that represents Egyptian officials. They're holding some type of apparatus in their hand. With the left hand, they are holding a foreigner's hand. When I say foreigner, we mean an Asiatic. How do we know it's an Asiatic? Because of their dress. Furthermore, this scene comes from what's called the Medinet Habu. The Medinet Habu, all right? This is from the captured sea peoples, whom among them are Asiatics, right? Which you can kind of tell if you look at the dress, especially like the fringe garments at the bottom, right? There's other things that will let you know that they were Asiatic. All right, so with the left hand, they are holding and gripping the arm. And with the right hand, they are applying something to their shoulder. So with their left hand, they're grabbing one of the sea peoples by their right hand. And with their right hand, they're applying something to their shoulder. What she's saying is this scene ultimately represents the early stages of branding slaves as property, as cattle, chattel slavery in ancient Egypt. But she admits, as a real scholar should, something that Jonathan Owens was perplexed about, but she admits that the apparatus that they're holding in their hand, it appears to be too light to be that of a branding iron. She said, in fact, they're holding it like it's a stylus, right? Like that pen that you would use to write on your tablet, right? Let me talk to y'all, right? Like that pen that you would use to write on your tablet, right? A stylus. And so I respect the honesty. In our community, and when I say our, I'm including the entire Afrocentric community, you don't see too many honest scholars, and that's why we don't have any real growth. So I appreciate her first admitting that from appearance, it doesn't look like a branding tool or branding iron. And she's admitting that it looks more like a stylus. but she's going to add more interpretation based on the relief to show and prove why it is in fact a branding iron. But as all scholars and real scholars do, she's first presenting some counter arguments just so we can be clear on the whole picture. You know, something that scholars today in our community rarely do, show the counterclaim or accurately represent the counterclaim. If the counterclaim is mentioned by scholars today in our community, it's always misrepresented to make that person and their claim look bad. That's not how scholarship works. So I'm hoping that we take a page, unfortunately, from her book. And again, I say unfortunately because we should be the ones doing this work.
Not branding. Others suggested branding, and yet others left the matter equivocal. Arguing against branding, authors have stated that the tools do not resemble artistic depictions of branding irons, that the tools themselves would have been too heavy to be held the way that they are, and that the object on the ground is a bowl of pigment rather than a brazier.
Okay, we can stop here because that's what Jonathan Owens spent the majority of his live stream homing in on. She says that there are some proponents that say that the bowl at the bottom, right, would actually contain, and I'll have her repeat it verbatim because I want everybody to hear it. She said that it would be a pot of pigment, right, with different colors, as opposed to a brazier, right, which would be the apparatus upon which the branding iron would have been heated on. She said there are some people who say that maybe this is a pot of pigmentation with different colors. And Jonathan ran with that because he saw that as a way to defend and make Kemet look good. Because remember, he is the Magi apologist. So he went on his channel to go off of the Magi apology and bring up a source text in Kemet that is not the text we looking at, that is completely different, to say, look, here's an example of what she's talking about. But you got to bring up what she's looking at. That's what we're dealing with. She ain't saying that there's no pot in Kemet that has pigmentation. In fact, she's admitting that some scholars believe that this might be one of them. So why are you taking us to a different scenery that shows a pot of pigmentation so as to suggest this is really what we're looking at before you've heard her entire argument? You see, I'm a person that I know how scholarship works, but I also know how listening works. Before we get to the scholarship part where we become scholars, we have to first apply ourselves and be good listeners. And I thank the Almighty, the Most High, that the one thing I am deeply skillful is listening to someone's full argumentation before forming my opinions and my thoughts, something Jonathan didn't do. He even admits in his live stream that as soon as he caught this, he opened up the live stream and started going. He didn't listen to everything she said. And that's going to be very telling in a couple of moments, that he should have stayed and listened to everything she said.
I would like to note that the original line artists of this drawing may have been a little bit overzealous in their reconstruction. It's true that in the line drawing, the Medinat Habu tools do not resemble the tools in the cattle branding scenes of the Theban tombs. The inscription seems to depict the officials writing with the stylus-like tool, albeit on a shoulder. But the photograph of the inscription, taken at the same time, shows the true state of preservation, notably that the tool itself and the hands of the officials are not preserved. In the photograph, the hands of the officials and the tools they are holding are barely visible. It's entirely possible that rather than a stylus-like tool, the officials here are holding tools more reminiscent of those depicted in the scene of cattle branding. The state of preservation also addresses the second point, namely that the tools are too heavy to be held as they are, since the hands of the officials aren't even preserved. Even if they are holding their tools more like a stylus, it is important.
Okay, I want to point something out because, I listened very carefully. So I went on Jonathan Owens' live stream as I was setting up this live stream. As I'm setting up to go live here, I'm listening to his live stream on my tablet. And one of the things he said immediately when he heard her say that this appears most likely to be, he said, we don't deal in most likely to be an appearance. We deal with sources and what the information say. Then he starts bringing up her age and how she's young and, you know, how he could teach her things. And apparently he really needed to listen. Because if he listened, he would not have came at her in that way. But even more telling is this point. Jonathan on his channel earlier criticized her for saying that this is most likely branding tools and a branding iron, in fact. He says no one should speak in most likely, most scholars. But then when he goes to offer an explanation on what it is, listen to what he says verbatim. He says, I have two theories. Throw up the video and shit alive. I had to get a little dramatic on that one. Because how are you going to critique her for saying this is more than likely what it is? Because you say scholars shouldn't speak in this is more than likely. But then when you go to offer your ultimate opinion, you say you have two theories on what it is. Are you not intelligent to know that there is no difference between what she said and what you said, except you use similar nuanced terms? I would like to think, as a black man speaking to another black man, that you should be intelligent enough to know that. So what I'm going to say is that in your passion and in the heat of the moment to offer a Magi apology, you jumped out the window and made those mistakes.
It's important to recall the size of the branding irons perhaps used for humans that we discussed above, about the length of a pencil and not that much heavier, likely not too difficult to hold like a stylus if one wished to do so.
Dial pad is where work comes together.
The object between the officials and the prisoners should...
Now, this part I want everybody to listen to, because here is where she said something that Jonathan apparently didn't stay around for. She said, now, if you go and blow up the image and you look very closely, she said the first thing you're going to notice is that from that bowl, that apparatus on the ground, which is proposed by some scholars to be a pigmentation bowl, she says if you look closely at it, you'll see the lines coming out of it. She said those lines are resemblant of brands of fire or smoke. Like how when something is on fire or something is really heated up, you see smoke coming up in line formation. She even compares it against a depiction in ancient Egypt of cattle being branded with a hot iron and smoke coming up in the same exact way. Jonathan, if you would have only stood around to hear her full explanation, you would not have jumped out the window to offer the Magi apology. In fact, you probably would have gave her a little bit more credit. But I'm going to allow her to speak.
Much heavier, likely not too difficult to hold like a stylus if one wished to do so. The object between the officials and the prisoners should be labeled as a brazier, not only because of its context and what is very likely branding, but also due to its size. If the scene depicted was that of permanent or impermanent marking, the ink would probably be mixed in the same way that traditional scribal and painting ink was mixed, dried ink cakes with a little bit of water. It would be extraordinarily expensive and quite wasteful to produce giant tubs of pigment, an idea implied by the suggestion that this object is intended to hold ink or paint. The shape of the object is very similar to that of both the hieroglyph for brazier and the...
She literally, in 35 seconds or less, debunked the notion that this could be a jar of pigmentation. She noted that it's way too big to have been that because it would have compromised the integrity of all of the different colors by having them in that same big jar. What makes sense? She says it is more than likely that this is the same apparatus used in the Debunking cattle branding scene in ancient Egypt, to which she offers a comparison composite image where you can see the two and how they are exactly reminiscent one of the other. That's how you do scholarship. You don't jump on the first thing you think makes sense and then automatically, jump out the window. You listen to the full argument. I say that in our classes all the time. Make sure you listen carefully to what is spoken before you offer a rebuttal, before you offer what we call the sacrifice of fools, which is just to speak without knowledge.
The brazier depicted in the branding scene from Nebuchadnezzar. The long straight lines emanating from the brazier could be an alternative depiction of smoke, or perhaps the handles of branding irons waiting to be used. In a rather sharp turn, I'd like to examine the textual record in both Egyptian and Aramaic. In Egyptian, there's no attested word for tattoo, nor even a word in the same semantic range like mark with a determinative suggesting pricking, poking.
Furthermore, the girl a little bad, because she went into the Meta-Netia and she said, there is no word attested to for tattooing or anything of that kind. And she says, in fact, but we do see the word for branding, further proving her point that this scene is referring to branding. She's debunking this and she's not even busting a sweat. When y'all look at Jonathan's live stream, he's dripping in sweat and still wrong. She's debunking him with little or no effort and she ain't busting sweat yet. And I gotta tell you, that's embarrassing. Because when they challenge us and our information, and when I say they, I mean those people, I'm using those pronouns for a reason. When they challenge us, you got to force them to bust a sweat. You got to force them to go into their bag. If they defeat us with ease, we dishonor our ancestors. But she beating this boy upside down his head, and she ain't busting sweat. In fact, she drinking from her Starbucks coffee.
Needles, thorns, etc. However, there is an Egyptian lexeme that refers to branding, written with a determinative for fire depicting a brazier, or sometimes both a brazier and a metal ingot. It is used in marking what is presumably subservient individuals, although I can discuss that at length. I will not for the sake of time. The position of the Mariu does seem to be fairly low, as well as the Hemu and Menish, laborers perhaps of the galley, maybe slaves as sometimes translated. The one literary example here is more ambiguous. The metaphor of marking or branding is used as a mark of ownership of a man to his beloved. In this song, one of the poems ends on the note that she has branded, Yab, me with her seal, Chetem, presumably indicating that his heart belongs to her. The use of the word Chetem in this instance suggests a brand rather than a tattoo, but in this case, I believe it may simply refer to a mark rather than specifically a metaphorical brand. The Aramaic texts where the study began offer more evidence and slightly more clarity. In all of the Aramaic...
By the way, this part of her presentation was actually brilliant. She goes into Aramaic literature in the late Babylonian period. Why is this interesting? Because apparently people are learning from the Egyptians, because the Babylonians also branded their slaves. But just so we're clear, when is the Babylonian Empire? Oh, Nebuchadnezzar. When is Nebuchadnezzar? 586 before the Common Era. And when did Ramses III speak of branding the sea peoples? Oh, in the 12th century, the beginning of the Iron Age, 1177 BCE to be exact to the date. Boom, gotcha. This is called comparative study and research. So what she brilliantly does now is she goes into the Babylonian and even some of the remnants of the Mesopotamian records to show and prove how whenever branding is used within the context of captives, we're talking about branding for the purpose of slavery. And she's going to show by doing what's called the comparative method, which is, by the way, a scholarly method, to demonstrate that this was a diffuse practice, much earlier practice in Egypt, but is actually emulated through other societies down the age, the Babylonians, other various Mesopotamian peoples. And watch this, because it do not stop there, because where did America learn that they could brand slaves if it was first practiced in ancient Egypt? That's why Brother Reggie say, I don't want them to learn this. That's why Jonathan Owens is upset that Reggie would dare to bring some of this out, because this could be dangerous in the wrong Hebrews' hands.
Examples, the individuals marked are always enslaved, whether bought, sold, or transferred. Almost half of the text, 6 out of 14 total, use the word shenet for both the mark itself and the action of marking, closely followed by setter for the action and shenet for the mark itself. 2 texts use just setter.
All right, so let me be clear. I see a comment in the comment section. I don't always address comments. Someone says oldest record of slavery was in Sumer in Mesopotamia, later codified by Hammurabi. That is correct. But who said anything different from that? I said the oldest record of branding slaves is in Egypt. This is why listening is an art form, and you'll find that not too many people are artistic. And I say that unapologetically. Listen before you type. I did not say that Egyptians practiced the oldest form of slavery. We know slavery is first documented in Sumer. We know that. But chattel slavery and branding of slaves is first documented in Kemet. This is why I said several times in a live that a person should listen before they speak, or maybe yet before they type. But let's continue.
And there are 2 texts that use unusual terminology, albeit related to the act of writing. 3 of these texts also indicate the placement of the mark on the right arm or hand. This not only suggests that this was the standard placement for a brand or a mark of ownership, but also mirrors 2 aforementioned instances of branding. The Medinet Habu inscription, which shows branding on the right arm/shoulder, and the Demotic cattle documents, of which 3 state that the cattle were branded on the right shoulder, also mirrored in Nebamun. The 2 more common terms, setter and shenet, should be discussed individually, since one can be more easily traced through etymology and the other one is a little bit more of a conundrum. Akkadian provides the most likely origin for shenet. The term parallels shindu or shendu or shimtu, a word defined as paint, mark, stamp, brand, or branding iron in the case of shimtu parsley. In Babylonia, there seems to be little question that livestock were branded, and by extension, owned persons. Legal texts and letters in Neo-Babylonian and the Achaemenid Babylonian provide some evidence of the marking of slaves, all using similar terminology. And
what she's going to connect in a couple of moments is absolutely brilliant, because in the image that she showed you earlier, the sea peoples were being branded on their arms. And she shows you in that same way in context that the later Babylonians were also branding people on their arms in the same place. So she's making it clear this was not tattooing and somebody drawing with ink. This was branding. And this was a practice that was later adopted by several societies and even ultimately America.
Referring to individuals in fetters. Occasionally, they were also marked with symbols reminiscent of those described in the Demotic cattle documents. For example, a star for Anna or a spade and stylus for Zida. Slaves who were bought and sold are often described as having the names of their owners on their right hand or wrist. In fact, by the Seleucid period, this practice was so common that the absence of a mark was worth mentioning. On the other hand, our term setter presents some difficulties. The word specifically refers to a text or inscription, not an image, leading some to suggest the 2 words, shimtu and shataru, the Akkadian equivalent of setter, were intended for different purposes, one for text and one for non-text. Although this distinction existed in Akkadian, I believe that by the time of Aramaic usage in Egypt, they essentially meant the same thing. Whether textual or not, they referred to a mark, and the mark in this case was a brand.
Recordings just got better. Hey, it's Dana from StreamYard. I'm so excited to announce.
Subservient humans in Egypt and elsewhere were unquestionably marked, but at
now she's showing you right now some of the branding apparatus. When I open my PowerPoint presentation, I'm going to show you about 9 different types of branding tools that were used in Egypt. And yes, I certainly got that thorough. I'm going to show you about 9 different types of branding tools that were used by the ancient Egyptians, but we'll get there.
At the outset of this paper, the question remained regarding the nature of this marking. Although there's no direct evidence of human branding, the textual and archaeological evidence suggests that branding was the practice, and alternatively also, that tattooing was not. Tattooing in Egypt held special regard as a sexual, cultic, and particularly female practice. No tattoo design is yet found to be repeated. Each tattoo was a work of art, meant to be admired in an easily visible location like the thigh, the neck, or the back of the leg.
The point she's making is extremely important. Tattooing as a practice in ancient Egypt were for cultic reasons, meaning for people who were practitioners, people who were members of the shrine. It had sexual connotation. And most people that were tattooed in ancient Kemet were women. Where are they tattooing prisoners in Egypt? So if Jonathan wants to make the argument that the sea peoples were tattooed, it's a silly argument because it goes against what we know about ancient Egyptian tattooing as a practice. It was done for cultic reasons, temple reasons. It had sexual meaning. Most people tattooed were women. So why are you trying to convince us that the sea peoples were tattooed instead of branding? Oh, I get it. Because you don't like the fact that if we acknowledge that ancient Egyptians were branding slaves, changing their names, because they also did that. We're going to get there. I didn't hear you speak on that. When a person came into Egypt as a Seker Ankh, they were branded on their arm like cattle, like chattel, like property. Their names were changed. Sounds familiar? Because what happened here in America? Didn't they take away your name? Didn't they brand you and slowly immerse you into their society, just as the Egyptians did, because they're captives, air quotes. They go and perform free labor, become immersed in their society. So now, what are you losing when you become immersed in a society and culture other than yours? You're now being stripped of your culture. So let's add them all together. So what happens to these captives, these Seker Ankhs? They're brought into Kemet and they're branded as cattle, chattel slaves. Their name is changed. They're immersed into the society where they lose their religion and their culture. Sounds familiar? Oh, I'm starting to understand now. I understand why it is you don't want to acknowledge that ancient Egypt did this. Because the fact of the matter is, you solely refuse to acknowledge this because that would strengthen the Hebrews' argument that America is just like Egypt of old, making the Bible real. And that's also why Reggie says verbatim, he does not want us to learn this. He does not want to have the conversation. He said several times he's not showing his full hand because the more of this information comes out, the more of the Bible becomes a reality. So I understand it, but it's corny because as I've said, and I'll keep saying, if you are first committed and invested in whatever you're intellectually and spiritually invested in, if you are invested in it for the truth, if you are truly invested in pursuing truth, then you follow that truth no matter where it takes you. And the moment you deviate from that truth, you lose all respect and any merit or credit because you are not a truth seeker. You have an agenda. And at that point, we don't really care for what you have to say. Respectfully.
Hand poke tattoos, especially figural or textural, take a long time to apply and require a fair bit of skill to pierce the skin to the correct depth, replicate the design or text, and ensure minimal bleeding. In contrast, branding had a long history of marking cattle for ownership. The process is fast, approximately 3 to 5 seconds, requires very little skill, and a branding iron can be used repeatedly. It's a short leap from branding cattle to branding chattel slaves, and it seems that at least by this time period, this leap had occurred. The terminology used in the Aramaic context, though generalized from its Akkadian origins, does seem to parallel the practice in Babylon of branding owned individuals. The lack of physical evidence of branding, especially when contrasted with the existing physical evidence of tattooing, should not be considered a reason to forego branding as an existing practice. Slaves and prisoners of war, the most likely bearers of brands, were the least likely to have been mummified at all, let alone well enough to actually preserve the delicate uppermost layers of the skin. High-status women bearing elaborate tattoos, however, are more likely to have been honored with preservation. When Arsamas wrote to his subordinate, ordering him to bring in new slaves into the yard and mark them with my mark, previous scholarship has been so inconclusive when translating the task, with one translator even stating, "What should we suppose Nahor was meant to have done?" In light of branding as a mark of ownership, the history of female cultic tattooing, the etymology of the Aramaic terms, and the archaeological evidence, it is more likely that Nahor and his contemporaries did not tattoo these unfortunate individuals, but rather branded them to permanently mark them as property, no better than any other property brought into Arsamas' yard. Human branding remains a cruel and painful way to mark an individual and certainly provides further avenues for research in the fields of Egyptian slavery. All evidence suggests the brand mark was on the right arm, always visible, always marking a human being as property forever. And the implications of the permanence of the status of slavery can be explored in a larger work of Egyptian slaves and subservient individuals. So thank you for letting me talk very fast through the last bit of that, because I do want to have time for questions. So I think, I'm almost entirely sure that I'm supposed to do it through the chat. So please do send your questions through the chat, and then you'll hear me read them out loud. A big question, the practice of enslavement. Oh, okay, hold on. It's hard to read them all at the same time, so I'll try to do this as well as I can. The practice of enslavement is notoriously difficult to define in earlier Egyptian history. Is there anything particularly distinctive about it in the late and Greco-Roman periods? Well, you'll have to hold your breath for me to finish my dissertation for the late period to be defined. In the Greco-Roman period, it is at least a little bit easier to define because the practice of Greek slavery is so well defined and thoroughly researched. And it's assumed that, correctly rather assumed, that the practice more or less mirrors what was going on in the rest of the Greek world. In terms of the late period, again, you'll have to hold your breath for the dissertation to actually be finished, because that is exactly what I'm exploring. It is indeed difficult to define, and part of what makes it difficult is that it seems like an impermanent status, and yet here we have evidence that it very much marked you for life. So while you could go in and out of slavery, or whatever word you would like to use to describe the subordinate labor practices going on at the time, if you were branded, you did carry it with you until you died. I hope that answers your question.
Remember the 90s? Your computer could suddenly correct spelling mistakes. That was life.
I still want to sit. Now, just so you know, that the conversation that the conscious community is now talking about is old news to me, because before COVID-19 started, I sat on Sonita's couch and brought all of this out. But now, all of a sudden, Brother Garfield has a debate with Jabari against Kemet, and Garfield wants to talk about chattel slavery, which is why Reggie began to bring some of this out, because Reggie's helping Garfield. But what everybody should pay attention to is, when I brought this out 3 years ago, they said I was wrong. But now that Garfield is about to debate Jabari, all of a sudden it's right. I ask you guys, do you know a forked tongue when you see it? And do you know when somebody is full of sugar, honey, iced tea when you see them? Because that's what you're witnessing. The conscious community has become a cesspool in many respects. And a lot of the people immersed in it don't have any real interest or vested interest for truth. It's all fun and games for a lot of these people. Very few people in the conscious community are really vested in the information, the knowledge, and the growth. And you can tell in the actions. But watch this video. 3 years ago, Listen to everything I said 3 years ago and look at what they're discussing now. Sit down with the elder, man. Whew. I still want to. I'm hoping that we can have somebody sit down with me on slavery in ancient Kemet, because I wanted to show some things. Slavery in ancient Kemet. I wanted to show some inscriptions from the period of Ramses II, and I want you to hear this, Brother Sonetta, because I know for a fact you never heard this before. Brother Shaka hinted towards it, but I read the Medu Neter. So when he gave the hint, I said, okay, let me go check it out. You remember Shaka had a little dialogue with Jabari and Garfield last year about whether or not there were slaves, and Shaka said that yeah, they were slaves. The people of Kemet weren't punks. Y'all trying to make them hippies. That Kemet wasn't strong enough to actually enslave people. He said yes, slavery is not a European thing alone. Black Africans enslaved people, and he's absolutely right. Our ancestors definitely enslaved people. But watch this. Shaka tried to limit it just to Europeans. He tried to say, they was just enslaving Europeans. Brother Sonetta, there are depictions in ancient Kemet of Nubians in the slave market being beaten and sold. Y'all remember this picture? Not to be petty, y'all remember this picture? Brother Jonathan, shout out to Brother Jonathan. He said, I don't mean to laugh, Jonathan. Jonathan said, this is more likely a rugby team. You can't make this up. Jonathan said the image on the screen is more likely a Nubian rugby team instead of a slave market where somebody's standing over the Nubians with a whip and another guy is taking a register. Jonathan Owens said publicly, I got to emphasize publicly because I think it would be an embarrassment for a scholar to say this. He said publicly, this was a Nubian, not rugby team. My apologies. If you're going to represent what somebody say it right. My apologies. He said this is a Nubian wrestling team. I'm going to need y'all to look at this screen real close. Why are Egyptian taskmasters standing over the Nubian wrestling team with a whip, a whole stick? Why is another one taking a register? This is why I say I can't put respect on the conscious community, because at some point we got to stop, look, listen, and call a spade a spade. Y'all got to stop lying. Jonathan, I only met you once. I've spoken to you a lot, several times. I believe I know you enough to know that you know good and goddamn well this ain't no Nubian wrestling team. And I speak on behalf of all Black people when I say to you, please don't insult our intelligence. Because where you from, Jonathan in the hood, when somebody look you in your face and lie, you damn near ready to slap them. Respectfully, don't insult our intelligence. That's not a Nubian wrestling team, brother. You older than me, you know better than that. Stop saying that. You know good and goddamn well that's not a Nubian wrestling team. And Garfield last year about whether or not there were slaves, and Shaka said that yeah, they were slaves. The people of Kemet weren't punks. Y'all trying to make them hippies. That Kemet wasn't strong enough to actually enslave people. He said yes, slavery is not a European thing alone. Black Africans enslaved people, and he's absolutely right. Our ancestors definitely enslaved people. But watch this. Shaka tried to limit it just to Europeans. He tried to say, they was just enslaving Europeans. Brother Sonetta, there are depictions in ancient Kemet of Nubians in the slave market being beaten and sold. Pictorial images with the Medu Neter on the sides, which give a description of what the scenery is talking about. Nubians in the slave markets of Kemet being beaten and sold. These are Ethiopians, these are Cushites, which we call today Nubians, being beaten and sold during the Ramesses period. So how the hell are we acting as if Kemet doesn't have slavery when you have pictorial images of Nubians being beaten? But I got something even better for you. From the period of Ramses II, Shaka gave me a gem. You see, I told you the reason why I'm a problem is because I'm unafraid to learn from people. I watch and study everybody. Shaka put a jewel out that he don't realize how much damage it's about to do. Shaka said not only were Egyptians or the people of Kemet enslaving Europeans, but they branded them. You know, like our ancestors were branded with hot iron. Well, watch this, brother Sonata. From the period of Ramses II, you have inscriptions in the Medu Neter in Kemet, which shows that they branded several Asiatic slaves. Branded them. That means they introduced a hot iron on their body with the names of the property owners to show that they were property. By the way, that's called chattel slavery. That would make Kemet in that sense no different than European colonizers in their behavior, which Jabari tried to suggest that, you know, Kemet had captives of war criminals, but they didn't really treat anybody as chattel slaves. That's incorrect, because chattel slavery is the idea that you are the personal property of individual citizens and not necessarily belonging to the state. So if I'm a captive of war, I shouldn't belong to Brother Jabari. I would have belonged to one of the Nisut or the nobles or the high officials, but I wouldn't be the property of an average person. But you have slave records in Kemet, which shows that average people in Kemet owned slaves and branded them. But watch this on it, because it gets even better. Not only were the people of Kemet taking hot iron brands and branding slaves, putting Medu Neter, because they wasn't doing it with English. The sacred Medu Neter language was branded on many bodies of melanated people, including Nubians, depicting that they are the owners of these people. Or I'm absolutely right. And watch this. They also changed their names and gave them Kemetic names. Sonetta. When we came here to America, we came as chattel slaves. We became the personal property of individuals here in America. We didn't all belong to the state. Anybody in America could have owned slaves. That's chattel slavery definition number one. Number two, many of the slaves were branded. Those especially who were considered a threat to run away. The reason why we're going to brand them is because if you run away, you're my property. I got my mark on you. The people of Kemet were doing that. They even did it to Nubians. And watch this. They also renamed them and gave them Kemetic names. Sonetta. Wasn't we renamed and given names by our European colonizers? Wasn't we beaten and branded? So who they learned it from, Sonetta? So how we gonna act like there was no slavery in Kemet when in fact it's the same chattel slavery practiced by these bastard Europeans right in the transatlantic slave trade? That's the conversation they don't want to have. That I'm telling you, that's the reason why you got all them phone calls, because I got receipts, brother Sonetta.
You were showing some of that?
Oh, I was showing it because I could read the inscriptions on the wall. I'm dangerous right now. The next person sit down with me in trouble. Next person sit down with me in trouble if they try to go against it.
I'm trying to get Jabari to sit with you. That's going to be real good.
Because the conversation that we've been having for the longest is how in the hell are Hebrews slaves in Kemet when Kemet didn't have any slaves, which would show a great ignorance of slavery, the history of slavery in Kemet. There were three types of slavery in Kemet. You had chattel slavery, which is the same slavery we have here in America. You had bonded slavery, where people actually sold themselves into slavery because of their poor means. They didn't have a really make a means, to make a living on their own. So they're bonded slaves. Then you had serfs, or you had servants. But you definitely also had chattel slavery. And they was branding slaves, brother Sonetta.
Well, they talk like it was just servitude.
Right. They downplay it.
You got all the Medu Neter where you see this going on.
Brother, I got all the primary source inscriptions. I'm dangerous right now.
Would you say studying the Medu Neter has advanced your knowledge?
Oh, of course. There's things I learned about the Bible differently because I'm studying the Medu Neter right now. One of the words for a slave in the Medu Neter is abeta, where the T is also a D. So the Hebrew word for slave is ebed or eved. It's the same word.
Now, Zion came strong. Zion Lex is coming And he did give the credit to Shaka most. I didn't play all of it. I still got more Zion to go. But Zion also stated that when Shaka was going at it with Jabari and Garfield, Shaka is the one that gave Zion the zeal to say, you know what, let me go and dig a little deeper and see what Shaka is talking about. And sure enough, Shaka was 100% correct. So Zion went deeper into the knowledge, found out that they were branding people. Oh my God, I even called Jabari that same day. It's on here. I called Jabari and I put Jabari on the phone with Zion. I said, Jabari, man, listen, man, Zion is coming with some fire. He coming with some smoke. And Jabari admitted that, yes, Ramesses and them had some slaves, yo, and some branding. But Jabari, was kind of sliding right in the fence saying stuff like, well, it was a different, some type of, you know how we do. But that's going to be fire when I bring these two together, and especially Infidisi. Infidisi and Zion will be in the house.
All right. All right. All right. Give me a second. So, y'all want to deal with scholarship, huh? Community? Y'all want to deal with scholarship, huh? So, 99.9% of the Israelite community don't know what this is. And 99.8% of the Kemetic community, 99.9% of the Israelite community don't know what is on the screen in terms of the sources. 99.8% of the Kemetic community also don't know because they don't read the Medu Neter either. But that 1% of people in the Kemetic community that read and do Medu Neter, they know what that damn TLA is. That's the TLA I got pulled up? Huh? When we want to see attestations through our Kemet, don't we go to the TLA? Y'all know who y'all playing with? This ain't Zion Lex from 2015. This ain't Kemet on trial, an event I never spoke at. It's 2022, homeboy. Look around. Knowledge done went up. I'm always elevating. You missed dealing with me a couple years from ago. That's a bad thing for you. Because rest assured, God willing, I'm always growing. It was better y'all debated me back then. Because where I'm at now, you in trouble. So y'all really want to play this game that Seker Ankh just means war captive. Y'all really want to play this game that there's no captive in Kemet that was really treated as a slave and being branded. Y'all want to play this game? So what happens when I go to the TLA and I start reading the text itself and I start embarrassing every single one of y'all line by line, one for one, put you on a wall, line you up, beat you up, smack you up, and send you home with an apology letter, because all y'all are is a bunch of apologists. Do you really want to play? Do you really want to play? The ball is in your court. I'm going to give you a little taste. Those who know, like they say, if you know, you know. The Kemetic community, if you know, you know. Brother Reggie, if you know, you know. Smash Rockwell, if you know, you know. If y'all want to play, let's play. If y'all want to play, let's play. Because I got some of the TLA up. And we all know, and when I say we, I'm talking about Reggie and Smash and everybody that does Medu Neter. You know, if I go through this TLA, I will bust your ass. Do you really want to play? Here we go, man. Here we go. Here we go. This is a branding iron from out of ancient Kemet. This is a branding iron from out of ancient Kemet. If you look at the size of the branding iron, you might not understand where I'm going with this, especially seeing that this image is superimposed, meaning it's blown up and really big. The actual life-size image of this would be far smaller than what your eye is taking in. This is a branding iron taken from ancient Egypt. And scholars argue today that this branding iron is not big enough for cattle. It's too small. In fact, it's the same exact size and dimension of the branding irons that were used to mark slaves during the transatlantic slave trade. Do y'all need me to bring back out the bombs? Because I will. Do y'all need me to bring back out the bombs? Because I will. The branding irons found in ancient Egypt, several of them, are too small for that of cattle. And in fact, parallel perfectly in size and diameter the same branding irons used on Africans during the transatlantic slave trade. Y'all really want me to bring this out? Or do y'all want to go first and tell the truth and have me sit back, take notes that you're at least being honest, and go light on you and don't bring it all out? Or are you going to continue to be dishonest and force me to embarrass you and call all your names out as I'm doing so? I've been embarrassing you guys scholastically for many years now, but I gotta tell you, what I did with y'all in the past is nothing compared with what I'm gonna do to the next person. Respectfully. I said on Son of the TV 3 years ago, the next person I sit with is in trouble. I wasn't pump faking. That's real talk. Let's play a little bit. I am a tactful debater. So this is going to be very tactful as I am a tactician. Here we go. The branding irons that are used in ancient Egypt, of which the image on the right is an image of cattle being branded in ancient Egypt. An image of cattle being branded in ancient Egypt. And if you look at it, it is not the same size as the one in the picture on the left, because the branding irons that were used to brand cattle, even in this country, are much bigger in size and diameter than the one seen on the left. The one seen on the left of the screen is used on humans. This one is from ancient Egypt, and it parallels in size and diameter the same ones used during the transatlantic slave trade, and we have citations for that as well. This is a closer look. Remember the smoke coming from the apparatus, right? With the branding iron that Smash Rockwell, Jonathan Owens was saying is a pigmentation bowl with colors. No, bruh. This is where they heated up the hot iron brand, and the lines coming out of it is smoke. That's what she was trying to tell you. But instead, you ridiculed her for being a young white woman instead of just sticking to the information. You tried to appeal to our emotions and our disdain for the people who enslaved us by just talking about her color and not dealing with her scholarship, perhaps because she actually brought scholarship. How about that? And this is the same image that she brought up. And you look closer and you compare the two, This is an illustration comparison of the brazier from the tomb of Neb Amun to the brazier found the Medinet Habu relief. So this is the Medinet Habu relief. This showing the branding of sea peoples. Jonathan Owens from the Magi Apologist Archers said that this is tattooing. And he said that this is the pigmentation that they would dip the tattooing instruments in. Okay. Even though you could literally see when a comparison is made from the brazier branding in the tomb of Neb Amun from the brazier of Medinet Habu, you see smoke emerging from both, as they were both used for branding cattle. And in the case of the right, men treated as cattle or chattel slaves. These are branding irons from ancient Egypt. These are branding irons from ancient Egypt. Make sure everybody can see the screen. The first one, numbered 59678, is a description, has as a description a falcon. This brand would leave a falcon on you. The brand number 36423 has a goose. The brand number 36437 contains the cartouche of Amos. The brand number 63714 is of a Seth animal. The brand number 63716 is a goose. Let's keep going. The Seth animal, the goose. Sekhmet, bullhorns, Aten, Nisut, Nefer, or beautiful king, or handsome king, or goodly king. These are all different types of brands used in ancient Egypt, not on cattle, but on human beings. I hope I have everybody's attention. Not on cattle, but on human beings. Should I open up the full description, Jonathan? Should I read from the Medu Neter in these inscriptions that detail exactly who they're branding? Y'all want me to do that? Speaking of Jonathan. Or are y'all going to open up the TLA and be honest about it yourself? It's already 2 hours and 13 minutes into this. It's also the Shabbat. The ball is in your court. Let's see what y'all do with it. To the Israelite community, Shabbat Shalom. To the Magi apologists, the ball is in your court. Your move. Let's go.